I never thought I'd come back to Pine Grove Valley. Not after everything that happened. Not after 15 years away, building a career in the city and distancing myself from the painful memories of watching my mother fight for a farm everyone said she should have sold years ago. But there I was standing on the creaky porch of my childhood home, holding the keys to my mother's farmhouse, and trying not to cry. The wind whispered across the golden cornfields like an old friend. Mom used to say the land talked if you listened hard enough. It didn't feel like a metaphor now. The wind bent the stalks, almost like they were bowing, grieving with me. A simple blue porch railing chipped from age was where her hands had brushed every spring without fail, repainting it herself. I ran my fingers over the rough wood, swallowing a lump in my throat. "This is yours now," said Mr. Jenkins, my mother's lawyer and lifelong friend. He placed a thick folder in my hands. All 2,100 acres of Johnson family farmland. Just like your mother wanted. She made it ironclad. I nodded slowly, flipping open the folder filled with land deeds, old maps, and handwritten letters. It was everything. Generations of family history lived in this soil. A legacy built with calloused hands and endless grit. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. I hadn't even started unpacking when a knock rattled the screen door sharp and impatient. I opened it to find a woman standing there, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her blazer too tailored for someone visiting a farm. Two smug-looking men in Meadowbrook Association polo shirts stood behind her like security detail. "You must be Helen Johnson's son," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Karen Thompson, president of the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association. First, let me say how sorry we were to hear about your mother's passing." I shook her hand, wary. "Thanks, but what brings the HOA out here?" "My mother's land isn't part of your neighborhood. This isn't Meadowbrook." Karen's smile tightened. "Well, that's actually why we're here. There are some covenant violations we need to discuss. You see, according to county records, your mother's property now falls under the Meadowbrook jurisdiction." I blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry, what? Since when?" She reached into a leather folder and handed me an official-looking document. 5 years ago, our boundaries were legally expanded. It's all on file. And since your mother never contested the annexation, it stands. I scanned the document. There it was. A signature that looked like Mom's right at the bottom. But something about it felt wrong. Too stiff. Too practiced. "This can't be right," I said slowly. "My mother would never agree to that." Karen waved a hand dismissively. "Nevertheless, it's been filed. Now regarding violations, we'll need the farm equipment moved out of. View from Meadowbrook Drive, and the fence needs to meet modern code. You'll have 30 days before fines begin." Before I could argue, they turned and strolled off the porch like they already owned the place. As they stepped into a gleaming black SUV, I noticed something that sent chills down my spine. Rows of freshly placed survey stakes lined the edge of our eastern cornfield. Those hadn't been there during Mom's funeral just 3 days ago. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, tax forms, utility bills, land documents that smelled like dust and time. A single lamp cast long shadows on the walls, dancing as the wind shook the old farmhouse. That signature kept flashing in my mind. I pulled out documents with Mom's real signature bank forms, medical records, even birthday cards she'd sent me in college. I placed them side by side with the HOA's annexation form. They didn't match. Not even close. The annexation signature was too smooth, lacking the shakiness her hands had developed near the end. I remembered how hard it had become for her to even sign her name during her final weeks. I stared at the date on the HOA form, March 17th. She was in the hospital then. I had the texts and doctor updates to prove it. Why would she sign away her land while hooked to IVs and barely eating? Answer: she wouldn't. The filing cabinet in her office had always been off-limits growing up. The brass key, I remembered, had hung from a chain around her neck when the funeral home had returned with her other effects. I found it in the velvet pouch where I'd left it. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the drawer. At the very bottom, beneath yellowed newspaper clippings and dusty tax ledgers, was a leather-bound journal with the words "Keep Fighting" etched into the cover. I opened it slowly. Inside were dated entries, written in her clean but fading handwriting. The first few pages detailed her daily routines on the farm. But then the tone shifted. Greater than March 6th, HOA sent another violation for my tractor being visible from the road. It's farmland, for God's sake. March 13th, someone moved. The property marker again. I had just reset it last week. Found new stakes pushed 40 feet in. April 1st, man with HOA badge was on my porch taking pictures. I told him to leave. He smiled and said, "Enjoy your view while it lasts." Greater than May 2nd. Too tired. Chemo tomorrow. But I found a forged copy of a land survey in my mailbox, no envelope, just dropped there. They're taking advantage of my sickness. I can't fight much longer. The final entry, dated 3 months ago, was scribbled in shaky ink, greater than they're winning. God forgive me, I can't keep up. I've failed my father and his father. I just want the land to stay in the family. I just want my son to come home. My heart broke. I wiped tears from my eyes and turned to the back of the journal. A yellow sticky note was stuck there. Greater than Sarah Winter's attorney call when you're ready to fight back. The next morning, I found myself outside a red brick office with a plaque that read Winter's Law, Agricultural and Land Disputes. Inside, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes reviewed the documents I brought while sipping black coffee. "Your mother was smart," she said finally. She knew what they were doing and began compiling a case. Photos, original. Deed copies, boundary evidence. Even recordings of HOA conversations. This journal alone is gold. She flipped through the annexation document. But this is criminal. The signature isn't just forged. It's sloppily done. And the timing? March 17th? Helen was in intensive care that entire week. I'll subpoena the hospital records too. Back it up. So what's next? I asked. We file for an injunction to halt any HOA activity on the property, Sarah said, and pursue criminal charges for forgery and zoning fraud. But you need to understand something, Eric. These people play dirty. Karen Thompson's husband, Jack, sits on the county zoning board. They have friends in high places. I nodded. Then it's a good thing I do too. She raised an eyebrow. I'm the Northeast Power Supervisor, I said. No new development can connect to the grid in this region without my sign-off. That includes Meadowbrook and Harvest Estates, if that's what they're calling this scam. Sarah leaned back in her chair and smiled for the first time. This is going to be fun. The smell of brewing coffee lingered in Sarah Winter's law office as we spread my mother's documents across the conference table. Her assistant had printed high-resolution images of every page in the leather-bound journal, every deed, and every signature comparison. Sarah zoomed in on the annexation form and SQUINT. See here, she said, tapping the screen. This tail stroke on the H in Helen, too straight, too consistent. Look at your mother's signature here on this notarized hospital document. Her hand shook a little. And here on her 2022 tax filing, see the lift at the end of the N? The forgery lacks that personal nuance. My jaw tightened. They did this while she was fighting for her life. Sarah nodded solemnly. Jack Thompson has done this before. Pushing annexations, manipulating maps. But he's never gone this far. Your mother had enough documentation to prove intent to defraud, and the journal is time-stamped gold. She clicked through a presentation she had compiled. Will file. A cease and desist immediately. Then an injunction to halt all Meadowbrook development activity, followed by criminal charges for forgery and land misappropriation. And if they push back, Sarah glanced up, they will. That's why we gather allies and stay 3 steps ahead. Back at the farmhouse, I sifted through the rest of Mom's personal files, trying to stay ahead of the storm we knew was coming. One binder, labeled Zoning Correspondence, caught my eye. Inside were copies of letters between my mother and Pine Grove Valley Zoning Board letters she never got replies to. Some were marked Return to Sender, others reviewed, no action. On one letter dated 2 years ago, Mom had written, in the margin, greater than called zoning office, Jack not available. Again. She had been fighting alone, writing, documenting, pleading for help. And no one listened. Or worse, they ignored her on purpose. Then I found a glossy trifold pamphlet tucked inside the binder, a marketing flyer for Harvest Estates, complete with architectural sketches of modern country living homes, luxury amenities, and even a golf course. Across the bottom was a logo, Meadowbrook Association Land, Trust. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't just an overreach. It was a calculated land grab. My family's farm was Phase 1. I emailed a scanned copy of the flyer to Sarah, then picked up the phone and made a call I'd been avoiding. Sector 12? I asked the dispatcher. Run a diagnostic and flag any recent infrastructure change requests. As the Northeast Power Supervisor, I had access to every segment of our county's electrical grid. And Meadowbrook, along with my family's eastern cornfields, fell within Sector 12. A few keystrokes later, a flashing icon appeared on the screen. Request. Grid expansion, Meadowbrook. East purpose. New housing development, 60 homes. Status. Pending supervisor approval. I leaned back, stunned. That request was sitting in my queue, buried under a stack of routine service calls. No one could move forward with construction, no wiring, no permits until I approved it. They needed my signature to light up their fake kingdom. A slow smile spread across my face. Finally leverageth next morning. I drove into town and made my way to the county recorder's office. The clerk, Mrs. Patel, was a gentle, gray-haired woman who had known my mother since childhood. Her eyes welled up when she saw me. Eric, she said softly, your mom was so proud of you. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. Things got complicated. What do you mean? She motioned me to the back, where she opened a secure archive terminal. Last year, I started noticing strange things with your family's land files. Boundary shifts, lot renumberings. I tried to call Helen, but she was already in the hospital. She pulled up a timeline of map overlays, every one more shocking than the last. Over a 6-month span, county plat maps had been quietly updated, each one carving away more and more of our acreage and adding it to Meadowbrook's registry. And who filed these changes? Mrs. Patel clicked a tab labeled Changelog. A list of entries popped up, greater than, filed by Jack Thompson, County Zoning Commissioner, every single one. Can I get copies of all of this? I asked. She pulled out a USB stick from her drawer and handed it to me. Already made them. Your mother helped my son get a scholarship to engineering school. I haven't forgotten that. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the grain silos, I was back at the kitchen table reviewing files when my work laptop pinged. New email from Karen Thompson. Subject: Meadowbrook. Expansion notice attached. Was a sleek PDF document titled Community Development Phase 1, Meadowbrook East. It described a partnership with the zoning board to build 60 luxury homes, with groundbreaking scheduled in 5 days right on my family's eastern cornfield. Then, My phone rang. Karen. I answered without hesitation. Eric, she said in that grating, overly sweet voice. We need to discuss some additional fence height violations. And those rusted farm vehicles visible from Meadowbrook Drive. Actually, I cut in, my voice low and calm. We need to discuss the forged land claim you filed while my mother was dying. Silence. I don't know what you're talking about, she said sharply. Sure you do. I've seen the real property lines. I've compared my mother's signatures. I've read her journal. I've spoken with the county clerk, and I know about the zoning board manipulation. You have no idea how real estate law works, she hissed. I know enough to recognize a criminal land grab when I see one. You listen to me, she snapped. That land is part of Meadowbrook now. We begin construction next week. If you interfere, you'll be facing a lawsuit so big you won't have a house left to sleep in. I let the silence stretch. Funny thing about new housing developments, I said finally. They need infrastructure approvals from Northeast Power Authority. She hesitated. So, I'm the regional supervisor. And your power expansion request? Sitting on my desk. Without my signature, your entire development is in the dark, literally. Karen's confidence faltered. You're bluffing, she said. But I could hear it, the fear in her voice. The HOA meeting is tomorrow night, right? I asked. I'll be there. Bring your husband. We've got a lot to discuss about forgery, zoning violations, and exactly how much land you've stolen. Then I hung up. 10 seconds later, the text started, from unknown numbers, board members, HOA lawyers, developers. I ignored them all. Instead, I walked out onto the porch and stood under the darkening sky. A breeze rustled the corn, carrying them. Scent of home and battle in the air. This farm wasn't just dirt and crop rows. It was blood, sweat, memory, my mother's legacy. And tomorrow, the HOA would learn just how dangerous it was to steal from a grieving son with control over the counties. Electricity. The roar of diesel engines jolted me awake at 5:43 a.m. I sat up, heart racing, and glanced out the window. And froze. 2 bulldozers were pushing into the eastern cornfield. Workers in reflective vests marched around like they owned the place. The old maple trees that marked our property's boundary trees, my great-grandfather had planted, were being torn out by their roots. Karen Thompson stood nearby in a pastel pink suit with shiny gold buttons, pointing as she barked instructions. She looked like she was at a fashion show, not a demolition. Adrenaline surged through my chest. I threw on a pair of jeans and work boots, grabbed my phone, and sprinted out the door. Hey! I shouted as I ran toward the edge of the field. You can't do this. Karen turned, her face smug and serene. Good morning, neighbor. Beautiful day to start a new chapter, don't you think? You're trespassing. This land doesn't belong to you, I growled. Actually, she said, reaching into her purse, we have full jurisdiction now. She handed me a document, but I didn't even look at it. Instead, I hit dial on my phone. Sheriff Miller, I said, get out here now. They're bulldozing my land. He didn't hesitate. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I turned back to Karen. If you take down another tree, you'll be facing a lawsuit so severe, your grandkids will feel it. She didn't flinch. You should be careful, Mr. Johnson, making threats like that. I didn't reply. I simply stood in the path of the next bulldozer and refused to move. That evening, the Pine Grove Community Center overflowed with people. Residents of Meadowbrook, neighboring farmers, town officials, and reporters packed the room. Karen and Jack Thompson sat on the raised stage alongside the other HOA board members. Their expressions were tight. Jack's face had the smug confidence of someone who thought he owned the room. They didn't see me walk in, but they noticed when Sarah Winters stepped up to the microphone and said, We'd like to speak before the board votes on the development plan for Harvest Estates. Jack leaned forward, mic already in hand. This is a closed session. Actually, said Sheriff Miller, stepping in from the side aisle, we're making it very open. Gasps echoed across the hall. Sarah plugged in a flash drive, and the screen behind the stage lit up with a slideshow, handwritten. Entries from my mother's journal. Comparison graphics between her real and forged signatures. Time-stamped recordings of her reporting harassment. Satellite maps showing the gradual theft of land through plat map edits. The final slide read, "This is theft, and it ends now." I stepped to the podium. My name is Eric Johnson. I grew up on that farm. My mother spent the last year of her life battling cancer, and this HOA took advantage of her illness to forge signatures and steal 2,100 acres of our land. Karen tried to speak, but the crowd began to murmur. You may not know this, I continued, but I'm also the Northeast Power Supervisor. And your little development? It doesn't have the infrastructure to run unless I approve it. The murmuring grew louder. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because my mother kept records. She built a case while dying. And now, I'm finishing what she started. Jack shot to his feet. This is outrageous. That land was legally annexed. Sheriff Miller took a step forward. Actually, Jack Thompson, you're under investigation for zoning fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud a property owner. The room gasped. Two deputies flanked Jack and read him his rights as he stammered and tried to argue. His voice cracked when they cuffed him. Karen turned pale. This is harassment, she shouted, eyes darting between board members who were now pretending they didn't know her. Karen Thompson. Sarah said calmly, we've submitted evidence to the district attorney for your role in the forgery and illegal land seizure. You'll be hearing from the state soon. A reporter shoved a microphone in Karen's face. Is it true you used false documents to claim terminally ill Helen Johnson's land for a luxury housing development? Karen didn't respond. She just walked out of the building in silence. The crowd erupted. Neighbors hugged me. Farmers clapped me on the back. One older woman with tears in her eyes said, your mother would be proud. The next day, I logged into the utility system at Northeast Power's main office and opened the request for grid expansion, Sector 12, Meadowbrook East. There it was. Blinking dot without hesitation, I clicked. Greater than status. Denied. Reason. Pending. Zoning investigation, capacity concerns, and evidence of fraud. I attached Sarah's legal documents to the system, so they'd remain in the file permanently. Later that week, the State Utility Board launched an investigation into infrastructure misuse in connection with real estate corruption. Karen and Jack's web was unraveling fast. Without power approvals, no bank would fund the development. No builder would break ground. Harvest Estates was dead, and so was the HOA. Yes, credibility. The county commission unanimously voted to reverse the annexation, returning the stolen acreage to its rightful boundary. Meadowbrook's influence shrank back to its original footprint. I walked our fields the next morning, the golden sunrise casting long shadows over the furrows. Near the spot where the bulldozers had torn up the maples, I planted 5 new tree saplings from a nursery Mom had always supported. I stood by the blue-painted porch railing later that day and looked out over the land. Not Meadowbrook, not Harvest Estates, Johnson farmland. Sarah called that afternoon. Charges have been filed. Jack may serve time. Karen is being sued by the state. You did it, Eric. No, I said. Mom did. I just brought her voice back. We published everything. The story, the files, the recordings, and photos. Local news ran the headline, Greater than HOA tried to steal 2,100 acres from dying woman, her son shut them down with the power grid. It went viral. Other communities reached out. People who'd been threatened, intimidated, or robbed by corrupt HOAs wanted help, and maybe, just maybe, we'd start a movement. But for me, it was simpler. I repainted the porch railing that spring, the same soft blue Mom loved. Then I sat on the steps, coffee in hand, and listened to the wind in the corn. This land had roots too deep to be stolen.